You're listening to
They're going to call it a hard foul. They're going to call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Hey, Mike, we are back for our episode of Hard Foul here, and, we're gearing up for the playoffs. We're in the less than a week left in the regular season, 3 games to go, and we have some breaking news from last night. The Celtics have re-upped Jrue Holiday for 4 more years at an average of about $37 million a year. He will rip up his player option for next year and actually reduce his salary next season. So next season he would have been slated to make $37 million. Now, under this new deal with his player option ripped up, his first year of this extension will be $30 million. So the trade that brought us Jrue Holiday, as soon as he was an extension eligible player, the Celtics locked him up. They said they were going to do that at the trade. When they picked him up, the intention was to keep him here long term. And obviously this feels like a place Jrue Holiday wants to be. So Mike, let's stop there. And then I think we can pivot to talking about the playoffs and the end of the regular season and some of the more interesting storylines that are left. So your thoughts, Jrue Holiday?
Hey, Jim, before I share my thoughts, can you just give me, I don't know if you're able to, a breakdown of what the implications for this are as far as keeping other guys in the future? Obviously, Tatum is going to be fine. He'll get his supermax. But when you think about a guy like Derrick White, for instance, maybe focus there, how does this contract impact that moving forward? And what does White's contract overall look like as far as how long he'll be with the Celtics?
Yeah. So it's a couple different things, I think. So I think initially the first thing Celtics fans should know and feel good about is that this ownership is, to me, is going, as far in as they can. This is going well into the tax. They see an opportunity to win championships. They are saving considerable tax. I think $35 million in the tax next season with Holiday's salary being reduced a bit. So that's something at least to keep in mind. But, if you're a fan of a team and you have a good team and with the salary structure that the Celtics have and the cap implications, this is what you want to see out of ownership. So I think that's the initial positive you have to take away. And this is what the going rate would be for Holiday, maybe even a little bit more, frankly, if you got into a bit of war for this guy and other contenders are looking to add him. So I think, people are going to say, oh my God, on the cost. He brings things to teams that, can't be measured in the stat box. He's certainly a leader, a great teammate. He's changed the way he's played completely this season defensively, where he's just been a guy that's kind of been stuck on the best player and asked to kind of chase him around. He's been asked to do a lot of different things. A great corner 3-point shooter. So I think in that respect, you got to be happy. As far as Derrick White, there's a couple things. So I know, like, initial reactions to this is I'd rather have Derrick White. And I said this before the Holiday trade. This is how, people should feel after watching him this season. Derrick White has been an excellent player, a borderline all-star. But if he's smart, and I think he is, he's not signing any extension that isn't between $40 to $45 million a year with the Celtics. And the Celtics I don't believe can offer that right now because of the extension eligible rules. I think White is.
Yeah, because he wouldn't be a first team or second team all NBA.
Yeah, so you can't increase his salary by, X percentage. And so he's only at 22 million now. So we're talking about 100%, raise essentially. And so I think he's almost definitely will go to free agency. This is his one big crack at the can and making a ton of money. He may never get that again. Doesn't mean the Celtics can't find a way when he gets to free agency to bring him back at that number. What they'll have to do at that point, Holiday's contract will be tradable. Maybe they start thinking about moving Jaylen Brown. I don't know. It's kind of a problem pushed to another day. I think
When is that point? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
so. It's not this offseason; it'd be the next offseason.
Okay.
Yeah,
So next,
I think I think Celtics fans need to accept two things. This is really good, and it's great ownership is doing this. There's a potential that there's going to be some very unpleasant decisions that the team is going to have to make in a couple seasons. The one guarantee you have is that Tatum's going to be locked up and he's not going to be moved. I think all of the pieces are potentially on the table to be moved to keep this thing afloat and to keep them as a contender. There will be people that you really like that are going to have to go at some point. But it's a problem for another day. And this is all you can ask out of ownership, I think, Mike.
yeah. So thanks so much for just breaking that down a little bit. My initial reaction to it was obviously I like it because I think with Holiday, with the way the salaries are structured in the NBA and salary cap and all the rules are, the Celtics didn't have many options there. If he was going to opt out and hit free agency, he was going to leave, and that meant for the Celtics that there was nothing in return.
Right.
Where your only option was to keep him, right? So maybe there would have been some sort of a sign-in trade where you got a draft pick back. I guess that could have been possible, but that's if Holiday is willing to play ball and even do that, right? So
yeah, he wants to be here. I think
that's clear too, right? So I think the Celtics didn't have a lot of options as far as we don't want to win this year and just this year. We want to win next year too. To bring back this starting five, this gives us a chance to, which would be like best case scenario, obviously, to be back-to-back NBA champions, I think is what they're looking at. Something that I wanted to bring up is as far as the Derrick White stuff goes, you had mentioned like the Celtics are going to have to make hard decisions down the road. Yeah. What I will say is if they're winning championships, maybe they won't have to. Maybe they'll be willing to continue to spend until the well dries up, and then it's pretty obvious that they're not going to win a championship with this roster. So I guess we really don't know. And the other layer to this, I think is.
Can I just make a comment on that point, and then you go in your next? I agree to an extent. I don't think you're going to be able to keep five guys. You're starting five, all making over 35. Yeah. I don't know how that's going to work in terms of what they're going to have to pay out and what that means for the rest of your roster. So I think they will do this for the next two seasons. Beyond that, I think we have to be prepared that there will be unpleasant roster moves.
Yeah, and you say that too. And the other part of it is I think it's harder to trade these contracts now too, since the new CBA. Trading a Jaylen Brown will be really difficult, even though teams will want him.
They don't want him,
yeah, trading a Kristaps Porzingis, which I think if he continues to play the way he's playing, he'll be wanted. So they certainly can move guys off the roster. You don't know what's going to happen with Al Horford. If he wins a championship, does he even want to play anymore? So you don't know, right?
It's a great point because it becomes a dollar for dollar trade. It can't be under the old CBA where you were within like 85% or whatever it was of the salary. It's now a dollar for dollar. So it does get more difficult, but when the player is that good and he's out there, someone's going to find a way to make it work.
And my last point is the extension of Peyton Pritchard by Stevens this offseason.
Yeah, great.
I mean, what an important, tremendous move, because even in my mind, like before this extension happened, I was resigned to the fact if Holiday walks, like I was ready, like to give Pritchard a chance next year to see if he starts, if he plays with next to Derrick White, and that's his starting lineup. Like I was kind of thinking this guy is showing us something as far as it's hard for him to show us something in the fourth quarter when he's out there with nobodies. But when he's playing with the guys, Jim, he's up in defenders. He's a great shooter. He's the quickest guy on the floor with the ball. He's their best ball handler. So I just kudos to Brad on that. And then the rest of the construction of the roster will be interesting always going forward because a guy like Sam Hauser, he's going to get paid. He's not going to be here. A guy like Luke Cornett, as much as I love him, he may not be here because someone might give him $7 or $8 million. So, I mean, these guys have really played well this year and earned a lot. So the pressure is on as a fan. Like, I really hope they win it, because if they don't, we're going to see some of these guys leave. And like, this is the window right now.
Yeah. So again, the Hauser decision's not till 25, 26. So the Celtics have a $2 million option on him for next year. That is definitely going to be picked up.
And they have an option on Cornette too, don't they?
I don't know. I'll look, but so that the Hauser, but you're right. When Hauser hits free agency, he's signing for somewhere between, and people are going to be like, what? It's going to be between $15 to $25 million a year. He's going.
Yeah, he'll get the Duncan Robinson contract.
Yeah, he will, and he's a better defender than Duncan Robinson. But so he will get that. Or maybe it's on the lower end, but he's going to get that. Luke Cornette, I mean, I think he's going to be a minimum player, maybe a little bit above, even out in free agency. There's just not an appetite to sign guys like him anymore, fair or unfair. But if someone does, what the Celtics have done is, they have now Neemias Queta, who they just signed to a full roster deal, and they have him as options for the next few seasons. That's a guy that I'm sure they're going to try to develop much in the same way as Cornette. A little bit better athlete. I don't think as good a basketball player, but over time he probably could become that. And that's why the Celtics, roll the dice with a Steve Matuak in this past offseason. Minimum veteran shooter. Maybe, they cough lightning in a bottle and he becomes a replacement for Hauser. I don't think that's the case, but they'll try to do the same thing again this offseason, find a guy like that, whether it's in Europe or otherwise or in college, that they can develop, and, that becomes their Hauser replacement. And it's not always going to work. And it gets back to the point that there will be unpleasant roster decisions, but you're right, where they deserve credit, and this goes back to Ainge, and Brad Stevens has continued that, is getting these guys to sign extensions before the deals are up. Holiday, Pritchard this season. I think Pritchard, you'd look at as well below market value now based off of how he's played this year.
Oh, God, yeah.
And they have him under team control, and the roster flexibility that they will have starting next season, that they really didn't have at all this year, and they didn't need it, and maybe they don't need it next season either, is they have some tradable contracts. And if you have to move guys out, or you think you're missing a piece, there will be the ability to do that a bit more next season than you have this season. So
yeah. And one last thing, Jim, I just wanted to say is, one thing we used to be worried about with the Celtics is their ability to develop players. And I think that whoever the development guys are,
they're doing a good job.
Down in the G League, whatever. I mean, Luke Cornette came here as a three-point shooter. He's not anymore. You look at
he did hit one against the Bucks, but no, he's not. Yeah.
You look at Peyton Pritchard. You look at Sam Hauser. I look at Cantor, Queta, so whatever his last name. My God, Queta, and then even the way J.D. Davidson's playing down the G League this year, he looks like a guy who could be competing for a roster spot next year, leading the G League team into the championship. You see Jordan Walsh playing well down there. Mm-hmm. These are second-round draft picks that might become NBA players. The Celtics are doing a good job, and I'm starting to believe that they can develop these guys as they come in.
Yeah, it's the one thing that they didn't do during that KG run is they really missed on all their young players, and they had to really chase some free agency with the Jermaine O'Neals and the Shaqs and folks like that, and they became very, very thin and depended so much on their older players that it cost them, I thought, towards the end. So they're trying to get that right here, and it's a hard thing to get right because you're drafting at the back of the draft, or you're signing undrafted free agents, or you're bringing in veterans that are looking for one last shot at a title, and that usually doesn't work all that well. But you bring up good points. With what does J.D. Davidson become to the future of this roster build? And the trades they made this trade deadline. I think they were not for this season. They were a look to the future. Jordan Springer has a player option. He's definitely a development player. He's a great defender already, a great finisher around the rim. Can they develop him at all as an offensive player? He has an option that I'm sure they're going to pick up, and I think it's around like 3-4 million, another tradable contract. Xavier Tillman, they have bird rights for. My guess is he's not going to be offered a shit ton in the open market. Opportunity to bring him back at a low number. That's a good tradable contract. And, potential Horford replacement down the line. Maybe it won't work out, but I'm sure that's what they're looking at. And I know you said you don't want to see him shoot any more corner threes. I think when they're telling him to do this all the time isn't a look towards this season. I think it's a look towards the future. And so I think it's key that he keeps shooting those, whether that hurts him.
On the playoffs.
Yeah, maybe not in the playoffs. And I don't think he's not going to get much run in the playoffs anyways. So those are the things they're going to have to do. But for this rest of the season in the playoffs, you're going to have this roster intact. And I think, Brad always gives us surprises in the offseason, but I think you're going to have this roster pretty much intact for the run next offseason too. Unless, things go brutally bad in this playoffs, then I think you will probably see a subtraction to shake things up. But I think that's where it is right now. And you have to, despite the fact that there's eventually going to come to a point where decisions are going to have to be made that are going to be unpleasant and uncomfortable. And you could look at that and be the dread person. But I think you have to more look at this as a positive that ownership is in this thing and to the point where they can't, or this thing just goes to shit. Yeah. And that's all you can ask for. And
you look at the other
bosses. That's all you can ask for out of ownership right now. And then we were critical of them, wondering if they would do this in previous years. So kudos to them. We have a great ownership group here, Mike.
It's nice to have somebody that'll spend. Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, it's nice to have somebody who's interested in winning. Yeah, because I don't know if the other teams that I care about in town are. So.
Yeah, and I was questioning it. I was very critical, and I was not sure on this ownership group if they had the pockets, the ability. So I thought the intent was always there with them. I really wasn't sure if they had the pockets to do this. Because if they aren't as well off. I mean, they're billionaires, so let's not get this twisted. But this isn't, what's his name with the Clippers or Cuban or other folks that just have bottomless kind of pockets. So this is pretty good.
Well, folks, I would assume ticket prices are going to go way up. Concession stand
they already
prices
have.
Are going to go up even more. So
I was looking at playoff tickets. Oh boy, are they expensive?
Yeah, good luck with that, Jim. You have to make at least one person in the household makes $500,000 a year to afford the Celtics.
Yeah, I know, right? So I don't know how. I'm not into grading moves, but I think this is as far as not completely unexpected. I don't think. I think I'm not shocked by this, but a good move. Good move.
All right, so now let's get to the current world of the NBA. No more of this future roster talk. Big game coming up between Philadelphia and Orlando.
Yeah.
That's one game that sticks out to me. Obviously,
impacts on the Celtics too, in terms of who they're going to play.
Indiana's got a pretty easy schedule down the stretch, but I'll be paying attention to their last two games. Miami plays 2 against Toronto, so I'm pretty much assuming they'll win out. So that's going to be an interesting. Those are 4 teams kind of bidding right now. And credit to Milwaukee. 2 games in a row, held teams under 100 points. And I think they've solidified that 2 seed, Jim. I don't know about you. I think they're going to – I have a feeling they're going to keep that 2 seed. So the East is starting to shape up here. And I really still hope we don't play Philadelphia. That's – at this point, I can't ask for the world, so I'm just not asking for Philadelphia. Boston.
Yeah, I think Miami's pretty much locked into that play-in now, unless there's some weird 4-way that gets them out, that a 4-way tie or something. But I think that's kind of unlikely. I think they played their way out of this last night with a really uninspired effort against And I know Luka and Kyrie kind of went off against the Mavericks. I just, you expected more. Jimmy Butler didn't even talk to the media afterwards. Obviously, we've seen this from the Heat before, and they've come back and played well. But I think they're in the
They
play.
will.
Yeah, and they're
they'll
going to be
play
on the
well,
road.
though.
They're going to be on the road regardless of who they play in that play-in. Yeah, a week ago we didn't see the Magic as a potential play-in team. I guess, didn't look at their schedule, which was they had to win that Houston game the other night. That was a must-win for them, and they got crushed. And
they got Milwaukee again after Philadelphia.
Yeah, but here's the situation for them. They lose to Philly and Philly wins out. That Milwaukee game doesn't really matter anymore because Philly has a tiebreaker over them, and the records would be matched up. So it's do or die in this Philly game for them, or they will be in the play-in. And I got to tell you, what if
they have the same record or better than Indiana, though?
If it's a three-way scenario, I don't know. I'm going to assume that I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know that situation, so I'd have to look at that. That's a great point.
I would be concerned if I was an Orlando fan if they end up in the play-in, because I would be hugely disappointed with this young team and what their mindset might be, that they could lose 2 games in a row. I think it's a big deal for Orlando to not be in the play-in if you're an Orlando fan.
Yeah, I'd be nervous right now. I think it's a great point, especially how they've reacted this week in these games, in these moments.
Because Atlanta can come up and bite you in the ass. They can. We've seen it. They took the Celtics to 6 games last year with that shit roster.
Yeah, they kind of, and Trae Young's back, but I don't know if that's a good thing for Atlanta, honestly. I think they were playing pretty well.
It's a good thing in the playoffs to have Trae Young.
Maybe it's different. Yeah. I wonder how they feel about him as a team coming back. But regardless, I think in terms of the Orlando situation, that it's almost a team I want to see the Celtics have right now. I just don't think they're ready for the moment. I think they're full of talent. Don't get me wrong, and I think they're a team on the rise. But
their lack of outside shooting by their guards, I think it makes it easier to defend them in the playoffs. I think that Orlando wants it to be a rock fight, and I love the way they play, but they really do lack that guard. I mean, their guards are good, tough players that are going to get up and defend you, and that makes them intriguing. Yeah. But I just think that the fact that their guards aren't consistent from 3 is going to be their kryptonite.
Yeah, and just to get experience too. And I think it's really right its ugly head in these last couple of games. I mean, you lose to Houston, which they're essentially playing for nothing.
They are playing for nothing.
You have everything on the line. You could have been the 2 seed still. And then you go and you play Milwaukee, coming off that terrible loss to Houston. I know it's a back-to-back to Milwaukee too. And their starters went deep into that game against the Celtics, even though they won by a decent amount. They went deep into that game. And
Bobby Portis killed them last night.
No Giannis. You couldn't overcome that. It doesn't – I mean, this Philly game is going to test their mettle on who they are. And I think if you see them lose big to Philly, I think it's they're going to be lucky to get through the play-in. I think you're right.
I'm not a betting man, as you know, but I'd be stunned if Philly doesn't win that game. Maxi's coming off a 50-point game, isn't he? No, not against Detroit. Prior to that, I think it was an overtime game.
Yeah, no, I would say Philly's got to win too. The issue with them is you just don't know how much of a time bomb that knee is for Embiid, and hopefully for their case, it's not. And they get out. If Philly gets out of that play-in, you can rest Embiid. It's huge for them, obviously, because of the rest, right?
Obviously, they don't play Milwaukee. They get friggin' Cleveland. If Philly wins that series, they're going to the second round.
Well, it's even bigger than that. I feel it's 2. You have 2 extra games potentially for Embiid in a short period, and then going into the first round.
That too.
Yeah, it's like you wonder how he can react. Will he have to miss games because of that? Otherwise, now you got a week off, and potentially Cleveland or the Knicks or whoever's going to wind up there. I mean, it could be the Pacers at this point. We just don't know.
Right. You know,
I think Milwaukee has wrapped up that too with these last 2 wins, I think. So it's it's very interesting. I think the one thing we know for sure is that it's probably Miami in the play-in. The rest of it's still up in the air on how these guys are going to wind up and who the Celtics are going to end up playing. It's going to be either Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, or, a combination of Philly, Orlando, maybe Indiana. Yeah, I don't think so, but maybe Indiana. So, of that group, maybe Orlando's probably the best matchup.
Yeah, I would think so.
Chicago, I don't. Chicago doesn't. That's a 4-game series if they ever had to play the Bulls. But
yeah, I don't think the Bulls are getting out of the play-in though.
Either do I.
I don't think they're going to win at home against Atlanta. I just have no faith in the Bulls. But who knows?
Yeah,
you never know.
Look, I didn't have faith in the Bulls last year, and they were winning with 2 minutes to go against Miami in that final playing game.
They were. They blew it.
Yeah,
they blew it. The Celtics would have made it to the NBA Finals.
Well,
well, Giannis was hurt, so yeah, Celtics would have made it to the NBA Finals. Fuck you, Chicago. So,
I have a question. Go ahead. My question for you is: out of the East, who do you fear the most? What's the biggest impediment for the Celtics getting to the finals? Team, otherwise?
Their coach. Okay. I still don't know if I trust him. I did watch that first quarter. I went back and watched it after missing it against Milwaukee. And you're right, Jim. He waited a long time to call a timeout once again. And I think we've seen this from him in the playoffs. So that makes me nervous. Him in big spots, him at the end of the games, not calling obvious timeouts like in Atlanta this season, for example. So end of the game execution and the coach really makes me nervous. The Celtics mindset at the end of the games and then fourth quarters and how they play. As far as the team goes, there's really 2 teams. There's the Miami Heat factor. I have no idea what they're going to look like in a playoff series. My expectation is that they're going to play really well. And whoever they play in that first round, they're going to give them a fight. And it's going to be dirty, as like not dirty players, but very physical with a lot of fouls not called, because I think the refs fall into that with Miami too. And so, Celtics Miami in that first round, I think game 1 is really important. I do. I think if they play Miami in the first round, they better win game 1 to set the tone where they didn't last year. And then the other team that's starting to make me a little nervous is Milwaukee's size against Boston. I think we have a huge advantage against their wings, but it seems like Tatum and Brown struggle a little bit against that size in the paint with Brook Lopez, Giannis, and Bobby Portis. Yeah. So whether they're afraid to go to the paint, obviously having Al and KP makes a big difference. But I do think Milwaukee's size and experience of winning this thing before, this is something I'm a little nervous about as well.
Yeah, I know the size definitely impacted them in that first quarter. I didn't think the Celtics came ready to play, and not having, Porzingis to seek out matchups and get Milwaukee out of what they want to do is with just hanging either Brook Lopez or Giannis in the paint. I mean, they didn't even cover Tillman out on the 3-point line, and Brook just stayed by the basket essentially. So the Celtics were playing almost 5 against 4. My biggest fear is it's a lot along the same lines as yours. It's the Celtics. It's, it's not just Missoula. It's how Tatum and Brown are going to play in the fourth quarter with a lead, or how they're going to react late and close. Are they finally going to trust in their system in the fourth quarter and continue to play like they did early in the game? In being willing to lose at your best. If you believe your best is being a team that moves the ball and finds the open shot, even if it's a 3, There has not been a willingness to lose at their best, I feel like, in past playoffs. You can't be afraid to lose at your best. And I'd like to see that finally kind of ingrained in them. I'm not going to feel confident that they can be super confident that they can be a championship team until you see that. The Missoula is also his. I think there's a lot of good qualities he brings as a coach, but what's maybe most important for a championship team is game management. And there's been real holes there. And you wanted to see things during this regular season that made you feel more confident. And unfortunately, I feel like the pattern continued of him not utilizing timeouts in key situations, or him not recognizing that his team wasn't moving quick enough towards the end of games when they had a chance to maybe get 2 shots at tying or winning a game, instead just limiting themselves to 1. So that stuff, that's my biggest fear. As teams, it's 2. Yeah, it's either. So I know you said the Heat. I think the Heat could be a challenge, but they're not a team that scares me. The 2 that I think would have the best shot to knocking the Celtics off, it's the Bucks, number 1, because of Giannis, but more because of Dame. I know you talked about the height and how that could give Tatum and Brown some issues. I think the Celtics figure that out if they're healthy. Dame is a player that, even through your best efforts, even with your best defender really doing a good job, can make you regret playing them, because there are times that there are no types of defense that can stop him. And we've seen it with him in the playoffs before. We haven't seen him on a level of a team that has a shot before. And that scares me. That scares me going into a game 6 or game 7 must win with him on the other side and a chance to win it down the stretch. He's the type of guy you're almost at the mercy of his will in those situations. So I know we like to look at a regular season as a whole and then decide how a team's going to be. I think we can't forget who he is based beyond this season. So that scares me in the playoffs. And then the other team, I don't think they get past the second round again. I think a lot of that has to do with what's going on with Embiid. But if they could ever figure it out, the roster construction of Philadelphia has been better than it has been in years. And I think they're well coached, even though I can't stand watching him during this. Oh God, what I hate to see Philadelphia, because I hate the 76ers. I can't stand Nick Nurse. Kyle Lowry, I want to put on a spacecraft and just ship him out to the moon. But I think
the spacecraft wouldn't make it off the ground.
No, I know, with his fat ass. I think this would be yeah, I know. God, I can't stand it. But I think that they would, if they got right, if Embiid is right, they're a team that they can beat you. You should win against them, but they can beat you. And when you have an MVP caliber player that, I mean, that's the thing. So we talked about Dame. Embiid can score 60 in a game against great defense. Going to that mid-range, and there'll be nothing you can do when he's on like that. Those are the teams that should scare you with that.
No, you can. You just hit him. You hit him in the knee. Give him a couple hits.
Yeah.
You're right, Jim. And the way Maxey plays with Embiid on the floor is night and day. So I forgot to mention Philly because they're so low in the standings, but they're a team, if they play Milwaukee in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised if they knock off Milwaukee. Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
No.
And it wouldn't, I don't think it would surprise a lot of people.
Especially with Giannis's health right now. No one knows what that is, right? So.
Yeah, and then 2 other things out west I just wanted to bring up. Did you see that Utah is on like this extreme losing streak?
No, I haven't noticed.
Yeah, so to all those people who are like, oh, they need to hire Will Hardy, and we all calm down, because 2 years in a row that team is just like falling apart down the stretch.
Well, they
He's
don't have.
not.
They have a roster built to lose too. I mean, at the same time, do you trade for John Collins when you already have 6 power forwards? Like Kenny Ainge isn't doing them any
I
favors.
don't know what that was about, but I'm just saying. Like a lot of my friends are like, "Oh, Will Hardy, Celtics right now. Will Hardy." I'm like, "Do you even really know anything about him?" Because
Yeah,
I don't see anything special going on there. And then the other thing was the people who were always like Devin Booker over Jason Tatum, like he's so much tougher and so much better. If you're paying attention at all, the other night they played the Clippers and Russell Westbrook's out there getting a triple double, and Devin Booker, probably in the biggest game of the season for Phoenix, scored 12 points. He dropped 37 last night, but the Clippers played nobody. So
I
it's just, yeah, I Tatum's such a better player, and I'm so sick of the comparison.
I thought out west you were going to bring up the Mavericks, and
Well, the way they're playing is
yeah,
like,
and this,
holy smokes.
and
Is Derek Lively even healthy yet? Is he even playing?
I don't think much. Yeah, I don't know if he's healthy or not. I know Gafford has been unbelievable for them,
He's been good
yeah,
offensively, but defensively, if they get Lively back,
and then
that's a big upgrade.
Luka is. I think it's a coin flip
Wow.
between him and Jokic right now as MVP. I said a few weeks ago the Mavericks would have to play this way for him to be an MVP candidate, and they have, and he
They have.
deserves. This might be his year to get it, honestly, and he deserves
And
it.
they're a tough playoff out because that ISO game translates to the playoffs.
Yeah, and look, another guy we both collectively have shit on, Kyrie. He's been outstanding. Like it's been fun. He's playing fun basketball right now. If
Dude,
you
he
watch
hit
him,
a left-handed he hit a left-handed running buzzer beater from the free throw line.
and he's saying all the right things. Like I still believe that with him, it's always going to end badly.
Of
But
course.
I'm kind of hopeful for him that it doesn't. Redemption stories are good, and if he really can turn a page and be a better teammate, and I'm never going to rate these guys as people because I don't know them, and that's not a fair thing to do. But I can tell you that he's been a lousy teammate throughout his
Yeah.
career. So if he's matured, then there's nothing. The best American stories are always redemption stories. So if he can figure that out, then good for him. That's kind
Is
of
there a more just basketball wise, is there a more skilled player in the league than Kyrie? Because pure
Jokic.
the Jokic, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jokic probably definitely. Yeah, I think Kyrie's up there though,
Yeah.
just with the ball handling and the passing and the crazy maneuvering he does on layups.
Yeah.
Really don't see from other players. Um, the different type of jump shots he can hit with moving his body. Um,
Yeah. Jokic is.
I don't think we've actually seen because Kyrie hasn't played that much. I don't think we saw that the last couple of years, but
No, and he
he's
was a
certainly
sulky baby. He was a sulky
yeah,
baby, and he let, you know, your politics are your politics. That's fine. I have no problem with him taking a stance on, whether it was, during the virus or whatever. But he chose to sit out games. And then when that ban was finally lifted, he acted like a sulky baby. And you heard him saying things in the background, and he would play sometimes and not play other times. And obviously the shit with the Celtics, and you heard about it in Cleveland before that. And so part of the reason he wasn't always there was a conscious choice. It wasn't just health, it was a conscious choice.
yep.
And I there seems to be some acceptance of that. I don't think Kyrie will ever take full acceptance of that. He doesn't have to because the past doesn't matter. It's what he does now into the future, and he deserves credit for that, for what he's doing right now. And he seems like he's being a good teammate and all that stuff. And
Who would they play right now? Who would they play if the playoffs started?
I'd have to look at the standings.
I think it's the Clippers, right? And then that'd be the 4-5 match.
Oh yeah.
I give them
Yeah.
a real shot in that series. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Hey, Mike, I got to wrap. But I think this was a good pod, and we'll try to talk, obviously, when the season ends and look at ahead the Celtics matchup in the playoffs.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone.